missile launches are a calculated distraction. While media cycles fixate on the kinetic theater, North Korea openly links its launches to the recent geopolitical crisis. Source number 2. This is not an attack vector. It is a signal designed to consume your attention. The mathematical certainty is that the real vector is silent, targeting the nervous system of global power. The primary strategic risk is not a launch-on-warning scenario. It is a communications blackout. Analysts at RUSI confirm the dual vectors for this attack: undersea cable severance and satellite blinding. The financial and military cost of neutralizing a carrier group is prohibitive. The cost of accidentally dragging an anchor across a fiber optic bundle is negligible. The result is identical: systemic paralysis. This activates the blind Leviathan protocol. You do not engage a superior force, you unplug it. An opponent that cannot see, cannot target. An economy that cannot transact enters a systemic solvency crisis. The objective is not to destroy the asset, but to render it inert, a multi-trillion-dollar paperweight, deaf and blind, while rival actors execute their objectives in the ensuing silence. The probes are not theoretical. Beijing's political ultimatum over Taiwan, source number 3, is a test of political will. The coordinated cyber attacks on European energy and water infrastructure, source number 4, are dress rehearsals for crippling civilian systems. They are not random acts of aggression. They are data points, calibrating the exact pressure required to trigger a cascade failure when the blind Leviathan protocol is fully initiated. The motive is not strength, it is solvency. For Russia, the kinetic operation in Ukraine was never a war of choice, but a desperate launch-on warning against perceived domestic collapse. CSIS analysis confirms the war rapidly became a domestic liability, an unpopular and unsustainable drain on manpower and economic liquidity. This is the definition of a solvency crisis, when the kinetic cost of maintaining the state exceeds its capacity to pay. This failure forces a pivot. When a state cannot afford the symmetric cost of projecting power through conventional force, it must shift to asymmetric vectors. This weakness is not a secret. It is a broadcast signal to the entire global system. Rival actors are not blind to this signal. They are incentivized by it. Observe North Korea's calculus. Their recent missile launches are explicitly linked to the recent geopolitical crisis. This is not random provocation. It is a direct exploitation of the distraction. U.S. intelligence confirms North Korea is leveraging the Ukraine conflict as a live laboratory, a risk-free environment to enhance its own war tactics. They are beta testing escalation protocols against an opponent whose bandwidth is critically overextended. This blueprint is now being executed across multiple domains. Beijing's amplified warnings of war over Taiwan are not a change in policy, but a change in perceived opportunity. Simultaneously, coordinated cyber attacks hit critical Romanian infrastructure, water and energy, testing NATO's systemic weak points. Each action is a calculated probe. One leverages political liability, the other, digital vulnerability. Both are designed to force a disproportionate, system-destabilizing response from a power facing a solvency crisis of its own. The central equation governing modern conflict is no longer strategic, it is economic. The Royal United Services Institute, or RUSI, documents the core asymmetry. A $5 million main battle tank can now be neutralized by a $500 FPV drone. This is not a balanced exchange. It is a solvency crisis for legacy military platforms. The kinetic cost of destroying high-value assets has collapsed by a factor of 10,000. This radical cost-benefit inversion is the engine of what is termed the democratization of violence. The capability to project lethal, system-disrupting force is no longer the exclusive domain of superpowers. It has been decentralized. This economic reality is the primary accelerant for the asymmetric escalation we now observe. State and non-state actors understand the blueprint. Rival actors are not attempting to match force on force. They are exploiting this economic arbitrage. The cyber attacks on Romanian water and energy infrastructure represent a near-zero-cost probe designed to test the systemic fragility of a NATO state. The missile launches linked to the geopolitical crisis by North Korea serve the same function: force a high-cost defensive response to a low-cost offensive signal. This is not warfare. It is predatory economics applied to national security. The mathematical certainty is that the profitability of these attacks guarantees their escalation. The analysis of systemic risk has fundamentally shifted. The critical variable is no longer kinetic strength, it is strategic bandwidth. The current blueprint is active. Overcommitment in one primary theater creates a predictable power vacuum, signaling opportunity to rival actors. They do not engage in symmetric escalation. They leverage the distraction through asymmetric vectors. According to CSS, these are not random acts of aggression. They are calculated probes into a system stretched to its breaking point. For example, a coordinated cyber campaign targeting Romanian water and energy infrastructure is not mere crime. It is a low-cost test of NATO's peripheral defenses. This is the gray zone in action, an operational space below the threshold of declared war. These zones function as proxy laboratories. North Korea explicitly links its missile launches to the recent geopolitical crisis, confirming its actions are a direct exploitation of the bandwidth deficit. The U.S. warning that Pyongyang will enhance its war tactics in Ukraine reveals the true kinetic cost. The West is now underwriting a live-fire training exercise for a hostile state. This protocol of exploiting systemic stress escalates directly to the political vector, with Beijing issuing ultimatums on Taiwan, calculating that the opponent's political solvency is too thin to respond decisively. Each probe is designed to force a disproportionate, destabilizing reaction. The mathematical certainty is that the system cannot absorb infinite probes before a cascade failure triggers a multi-front kinetic event. The central flaw in strategic command is time. A ballistic missile traverses continents in under 30 minutes. This reality forced the creation of the Launch on Warning protocol. Analysts at CSIS confirm this is not a choice. It is a mathematical response to time compression. The doctrine dictates that if early warning systems detect an inbound nuclear launch, a retaliatory strike is launched before the incoming warheads detonate. There is no time to confirm impact. The system is designed to trade the risk of a false positive for the certainty of guaranteed retaliation. This protocol is now the primary target. The recent cyber attacks on Romanian infrastructure were not random vandalism. They were a probe. This is the new vector of asymmetric escalation. An adversary does not need to build 1,000 missiles. They only need to blind the system that detects them. This creates the fog of digital war. A cyber attack blacks out radar and satellite feeds. The commander now has zero visibility. Does the silence mean peace, or does it mean the early warning assets have been destroyed in a decapitation strike? The protocol's logic is unforgiving. In a state of total sensor blindness, the system defaults to the highest probability threat. A coordinated first strike is underway. The commander is no longer a decision-maker. They are a system component forced to execute a pre-authorized sequence. The fear isn't of the unknown. The fear is of the known protocol. The mathematical certainty is that launching becomes the only way to mitigate the risk of total annihilation. The digital blindfold forces a kinetic solvency crisis. This isn't a mistake. It's a feature of systemic risk being actively leveraged. The United States is not facing a military crisis. It is facing a systemic solvency crisis. The currency is not the dollar. It is strategic bandwidth. Every asset deployed to the kinetic theater in Ukraine is a fixed liability. This has created a predictable power vacuum, and rival actors are not ignoring the signal. They are leveraging the distraction. The operational blueprint is already public. The coordinated cyber attacks on Romanian water and energy infrastructure were not a crime. They were a field test. Source number 4. It proved the viability of using low-cost, asymmetric vectors to trigger a cascade failure in interdependent civilian systems. This is the model for 21st century siege warfare. This blueprint is now being calibrated by state actors. North Korea is explicitly linking its missile launches to the recent geopolitical crisis. Source number 2, leveraging the moment to test response thresholds. Concurrently, Beijing issues direct warnings of war risk over Taiwan. Source number 3, creating a second front in the solvency crisis. These are not isolated provocations. They are synchronized probes to measure bandwidth depletion. The calibration forecast. The next event will not be kinetic. It will be an attribution impossible calibration shot to test the system's breaking point. Within the next 12 months, a cascading systems failure will paralyze the port of Los Angeles Long Beach. It will manifest as a critical logistics software glitch in the crane and container network, expanding to disrupt local power and communications for 96 hours. The attack vector will be untraceable, buried under layers of proxies, forcing a fatal hesitation in the U.S. response protocol. This is not an act of war. It is a measurement of paralysis.